Okay. First of all, announcements. I have an announcement from Edward that the third Thursday meeting this month is having to be moved to the fourth Thursday because they are playing in New Orleans. So can't be here for a third Thursday meeting. He is asking that any suggestions for locations to go for the third Thursday, restaurants, other places, just go ahead and send them to him. The next announcement would be from Isabella, who is also, I think, at the celebration. The board meeting is on Monday at 1:30, and if you have any questions about attending it, as usual, they are open for you to come and watch our shenanigans. They are open for anybody to come and witness what we do. So contact Isabella should you want to join us. The third thing that I have down is Carolyn. Carolyn McMurray has something to say about the incoming journey in October.
Yes, we have about 10 folks coming from the Suncoast Club in Clearwater, October 14th to the 21st. Now, fortunately, we've already got our home hosts lined up. You may be one of them, and I hope you would know about that through Paula, but I do need day hosts. So please try to let me know if you can be a day host one day from October 14th through October 21st. We're also looking for good ideas and new things that we might be able to do. Some things we've done in the past may not be available to us because of COVID. A few things I've looked into for this next journey are not available because of COVID. So we need lots of ideas. Please email, call, or whatever, and let me know of any thoughts you have for entertaining things to do with this group. And especially if you can be a day host. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Carolyn. Does anybody else have anything they wish to say to the group? Yes, Mary.
Yeah, on this Sunday evening, I'm doing a presentation for Evergreen Club, the Bed and Breakfast Club at 6 p.m. And it's going to be on our Montana trip. And I know several of you went, Baymeyer, Layla, I see a couple of you who were on that. If you don't have to have gone on that trip to see it, but if you're interested, it's not really featuring us with our hosts and all that, more about the scenery and places we went. It's a little more information than maybe we had when I did it 10 years ago, 11 years ago, actually. So if anybody's interested, drop me an email or something. I'll send you the link for it. We're always glad for visitors for that. For it's Montana and Glacier, which is my screensaver, and Waterton National Park.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, Julia.
Carolyn, do you want to mention that I think you said Ray is kind of doing the day hosting chairing, right? Is that correct, Carolyn?
Who is doing? No, he said he will be a day host. He did not.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought you said he was going to be the chairman.
On him and making the chair the way she did to me. I will be looking for volunteers. If anybody would like to be the day host chair and or a day host, please let me know. We need all the help we can get.
Did you say all the home hosts though are organized?
As far as I know, Paula has them all lined up. Yes. I don't know who they are, but I know that she said she has them all set.
Okay, so I could possibly, I haven't heard from Paula, so I could possibly do the day host chair.
That would be absolutely wonderful.
Ooh, wonderful.
But I haven't heard from Paula, so I assume I'm not one of the people she's contacted.
Well, you may be. I'd check with her first.
Well,
I know, I will.
She said she had all of the home hosts she needed, but I have no idea who the others are.
Yeah, she just sort of has counted up. I don't know that she's contacted people per se.
Well, Julia, you just became the day host chair.
Carolyn, I could do small dinners if you wanted me to.
That would be great. Thank you, Pat.
Oh, this is wonderful.
There you are.
Carolyn, it's Barb.
You mean, Pat, before Carolyn jumps to conclusions, You mean the coordinator for,
Yes.
or you would provide one?
No, I'll do the coordination
Right, that's
There you
what
go.
I thought you meant.
and I'll
I
probably
just-
provide one too.
Just to be sure.
Thank you.
Carolyn,
Yes,
it's Barb. I can be a day host Monday or Tuesday.
wonderful. All right, Julia, did you get that?
Oh, I did, of course.
Okay, so now you've got two. You've got Barb and you've got Ray.
Okay.
Well, this is.
Does anybody else have
I don't
anything
have
to add?
anything
No.
else.
Does anybody else want to volunteer for anything or have any other announcements?
I think that Michael and Jackie should do a small dinner. Because we can
so
all
too.
go out and stay.
That sounds like a good idea. We
It
will.
would be,
Sure.
it would be fun to have a small dinner in New Mexico.
That's right.
Come on over.
And Michael
just
has
have
a
to
new
get all the
post up
people
today,
there.
blog up today on Madrid, which I've been to. Some of you have been to Santa Fe or Albuquerque, probably know where that is.
Yes, I got that as well. That was, thank you, Michael. That was interesting.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Anything else anybody wants to say? Well, then I will pursue with the program. Would you mind muting yourselves, please? That way we don't get any extraneous noise while I'm doing this. And I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, here we go. Okay. In February of 2020, I went to Guatemala. Let me move there we go. That's better. I have a friend who works for the Methodist Church, and she has in the past and still does, but she's retiring imminently. She does mission groups to various locations, actually all over the world. And she does stove building groups trips to Guatemala. And at the end of 2019, we were talking about it, and I asked her if I could join her. And accepted gratefully, since I speak a modicum of Spanish, and they needed people who could interpret or help doing some of the interpreting. So in February of 2020, a group of 14 of us flew to Guatemala City. Then from there, we drove, it was a very long day. We drove to a place called Chichicastenango up here, which is up in the mountains. And it took 5 hours to drive the 142 kilometers up there because the condition of the roads is so bad and it's S-bends almost all the way. Something to notice is that some names of towns and villages, mostly villages in this area, end in the word Tenango, the suffix Tenango, you'll notice. And that, I've been told, means the place of. I don't know if it's only in this area in Guatemala or if it's all over. I haven't noticed it very much elsewhere, but for sure there are quite a few of them down in this area. A lot of them are shortened. Chichicastenango is a bit of a mouthful, so it's shortened to Chichi. Quetzaltenango is shortened to Shela. Why Shela? I'm not too sure. We may get some help on that later after the program. But that's something to notice. Okay. We stayed in a hotel in Chichi. We arrived on the Saturday night, and Chichi is in the Quiche Maya area. Get rid of that. In the Quiche Maya area of Guatemala, and it's at about an elevation of 6,500 feet. So we climbed up a bit to get there. It has a huge market, which operates about twice a week on Thursdays and Sundays. So we arrived late on the Saturday and went to the market on the Sunday. It is absolutely huge. It's the largest market there is in Central America, and it's massive. And it's not just foreigners there. It's got lots and lots of local people. So that gave us a little bit of time to acclimate to the altitude. We also that day, before I move on, this is just a couple of pictures of our hotel. It was beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. Full of plants and of course the parrots, and it was a lovely, lovely hotel. That day, that Sunday, we also went up and climbed around the cemetery, and I mean climbed around the cemetery, because it's built up in the hills, and it's a walk up to pretty much any of these, whichever one you want to go to, the sarcophagi. And then here on the right, the picture on the right is one, it struck me as rather amusing. It's an offering to the gods, but its location was interesting because it was placed in front of a Catholic church. So they were covering all their bases by doing all this. I thought that was rather interesting. And then the next day, we set off. There were 14 volunteers in total. Each of 4 days, we drove out to the villages at approximately 8,500 feet to work. And each evening we returned to the hotel pretty tired and dirty. You'll see what I mean after you've seen some of the work that was going on. We were in teams, we're 5 teams of about 2 or 3 people and a stove builder with each team. The builder spoke Spanish and Quiche, and then one volunteer spoke at least a modicum of Spanish. So there was much translating and gesticulating and such going on to be able to translate what exactly we were supposed to do and what they would do, etc., etc. The builder earned $28 per stove, paid by the family. That was all that the family paid, and some of the families had a hard time scraping up $28. They handed out, they would hand $28 or the equivalent to the builder at the end of the stove building. And some of them didn't have the money. They had some of it, but not all of it. So how that all worked out, I don't quite know. The materials were provided and transported by the church, the Methodist Church of both this country and Guatemala. They have contacts there who arrange it all, and we would get to a compound area, like a house, and there would be a big pile of sand and a whole bunch of bricks. And sifting, and then the builder would have these sifting materials and everything else with them. And then we would get going. Now, this is an example of the ceiling of some of the cookhouses. They had fires inside in the cookhouse. It was an open fire, and the reason for building these stoves is this is one of the reasons. So God knows what their lungs were like. And then also it's very dangerous because they'd have this open fire with women with long skirts and kids and dogs and poultry all running around the place. And these fires wasted a lot of fuel. They use wood, and there's deforestation going on in Guatemala, just as in a lot of those countries. And so the fires themselves, they use pine wood mostly. They were just a tremendous waste of wood. So this was one of the, this is just to show you an example. Now, the building. The foundation, the stove builder was the expert. He told us what to do and gave us directions. We were the grunt workers. We sifted sand for the mortar. Now, keep in mind that this was not like the kind of sand that you find here when you go to Home Depot and get a bag of sand. this was sand that was full of stones and all kinds of junk. So we sifted the sand, hand sifted it, and we soaked all the bricks. So we had to find a source of water, which thank goodness they all had. And we had to find a big bucket. And we would put these bricks and stones in the bucket and they would be soaked. And then after they'd been soaked, then we would be given instructions to carry them into the room, into the kitchen, into the cook room. So it was hard work. In total, we built 25 stoves in 4 days, an average of 2 a day, often in different villages. Much depended on how difficult it was to get to the homes. Nothing was on level land, nothing at all. So we were always going up or going down, one or the other. And the roads were extremely rutted. Obviously, they weren't finished. They were rutted from all the rains that they get. The second and third layer of the walls, basically, of the stove were added and held together all the time with mortar. And then a layer of dirt was thrown into the middle. Now, many of the cookhouses were not lit, so the work was done by the light of a flashlight. Or if the builders were lucky enough to have a headlamp, they would wear that. I had a headlamp, I donated my headlamp. Everything, absolutely everything was done by hand. There was no mechanization at all. Then 2 layers of fire bricks, of course these all had to be pre-soaked as well, were put on top of the dirt with a slurry of concrete. You can see that there. There's 1 layer already down there, and this is the slurry of concrete. And then to stabilize them. And then the blocks around the edge were half filled with stones from the sand sifting, which we had previously done, and then topped with mortar. Okay, now, then the base of the chimney was built up with bricks. Now those were soaked as well. Yes, those were soaked as well. They were formed with bricks immediately over the back end of the center of the stove, and with a channel that kind of went in an S shape up through it towards where the chimney would sit. And then the bottom half of the chimney was placed to allow for the escape of the smoke. Now, having kind of eyeballed, some of this was eyeballing, where the chimney would exit through the roof, then the builder would get his wooden ladder, climb up onto the roof, and remove some of the tiles. That could take quite a lot of time because he kind of had to get a feel for where the top of the chimney was. So that was that. So you've got a couple of pictures here of him up there, and the one on the right is a close-up view of him actually taking the tiles out. And this is where the location of the hole for the chimney was in the correct place, thank goodness. So then the second part of the chimney was added, and you can see, if you look carefully on the lower part of the photo, on the lower left, you can see where they were joined. And then some kind of heat-proof material was used to seal the hole, the chimney in the hole. To be honest with you, I don't know what it was. Hopefully not asbestos. But anyway, something was put in there to seal the hole around the top of the chimney. Now, sometimes there would be a corrugated iron roof. Now, this is a particularly clean one, which is great, because this is a newer roof. obviously. The builders, they just used whatever the heck they had to make the hole for the chimney. Sometimes they use their machete, sometimes they use a machete and a hammer, sometimes they just pull a knife from the pocket, whatever they had at hand. And they did have to be persuaded to wear eye protection. We took some of that with us, and work gloves and everything else. God forbid they wear work gloves, but we did manage to get them to wear eye protection. Now, this is back down inside the cookhouse. The base was finished off. And this is one of our group. He always liked finishing off. He really enjoyed the finishing off. That it required some detail work. And if you look down closely, just above the pail, you'll see the hole where the smoke disappears. And then it kind of works its way between the bricks and up through the chimney. Then the stove builder, the expert, would put tiles around the edge of the top, and he stuccoed all the way around the edges, around the walls. So it had ended up looking very neat and tidy. This is just an idea. The picture on the right is an idea of the kind of places we were working in. This is one of them. You can't see the stove, but it's somewhere tucked down below the bottom of the photo. And then on the left is Turkey. We were working so hard that we got about 2/3 of the way through building a stove when all of a sudden somebody turned around and noticed this turkey sitting on top of its eggs in this bowl. Obviously incubating her eggs. Let's hope I don't know, hopefully she's not going to be one of the candidates for the oven. I don't know. Anyway, but that was funny. Okay, this is a picture of one of the families for whom we built a stove. On top of it is the hole there's a little burner cover that goes in there. There's an insert that goes in there. And if I remember correctly, there was a second insert that went in behind there. These were pieces of equipment that were guarded very carefully and put on at the end of all this, because you certainly didn't need to lose those. They were a very important part of the whole thing. And the family was off to wait for a month before they used the stove. And we gave as a donation a set of cooking equipment. This is all of us. This is our little team with the builder at the back and the three of us and the family members and whoever else happens to be passing by. And this is a stove after completion. And
this meeting is being recorded.
We would then move on. I don't remember if this was the second one of the day or the first one of the day, but we would move on and do another one after this. We would get up there, we'd leave at about 7 in the morning, got up wherever we were going at about 8. We'd work from about 8 until 11:30 or 12 until we finished the stove. We had our lunch with us. We had packed lunches. We would eat our lunch, and then we would start work on another one. So we could get 2 done, possibly start a third one, but definitely we were getting 2 done a day. This is, I think this the one on the left is lovely. This is a photo of 2 of the kids. And this is a particularly luxurious cookhouse because it's got wood framing, and so this was a pretty fancy place. And then on the right is a typical area within the compound. This is where we would do our sifting. That bowl, that blue bowl there, is one of the bowls that we would use for soaking our bricks. And this is a pretty typical compound area where we would be doing all our sifting and soaking and everything and such like. After those 4 days, we made the 4-hour drive to La Antigua, where we relaxed, where we actually got there late on the Friday, and we spent the Friday night and the Saturday night there in a lovely hotel. I've been to Antigua a couple of times before. I really like that place. We enjoyed the 3 volcanoes. They're pretty magnificent, but thank goodness none of them were erupting. And went to a coffee finca. The weather was absolutely beautiful. It was idyllic. And this is when the day after we returned to Houston in the rain. And we came back to the pandemic because we'd gone in February. It was right at the end of February. And of course, about a few days after that is when we started all our mask wearing and our social distancing and everything. So that is it, folks. Not a very long program, but hopefully explanatory. Thank you. Let me put that down. And has anybody got any questions?
Yeah, Felicity, what's the one stove used per family or for a group of families?
One stove per family. We think it was one stove per family. I'll be very honest with you, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But we built a stove, and then if they want, but generally it was one stove per compound per family, which was how it was put to us.
Okay.
But it was, Yes, Julia.
So how many families lived in each compound? I mean, no, how many families were there in the whole compound?
Well, that was so hard. That really was hard to tell because everybody mixed up. Everybody mixed and everybody ran around all over the place. I'm having some trouble trying to find my opening everything up. So you're going to have to tell me if you want to say something. Anyway, it was very, very hard to tell. When I say a compound, it would basically be one building, which was the cookhouse, and another building, which was very clear that they all slept in. And then there would be what looked like a storage area. So my suspicion is that each little group of buildings was just one family. Or one extended, they had extended families, they had kids all over the place. So it's pretty much, I think it was just one area for one family, to my knowledge. We were too busy, to be honest with you, too busy to ask too many questions. We got there, worked like heck, had lunch, got somewhere else, worked like heck, and then left.
So would you say running around there was like 40 or 50 people?
No, no. Usually less than that. Usually fewer than that. I think we were somewhat of a magnet. When they knew we were coming, then kids from all around would come and watch us, and because they all want to see what's going on. I would mostly there were families. A mother, sometimes a father, or a man, whether he would be the father or an eldest son or something, and then about 3 or 4 kids running around. But then there would be other kids that would join us. So you really can't tell. Not regulated like we are.
Did they live in the cookhouse? I mean, did they sleep there or live there, or was there other rooms?
Well, they usually slept in the other room. There's another room. There's another house there. Yeah, that they slept in. Yeah, you could tell they slept in. The cookhouse that we worked in was only used for cooking.
I see.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Felicity,
Can I ask I don't know when to speak. Can I speak? This is Ruth.
Go ahead.
Can y'all hear me? I don't know how this works. Okay. This is going to show my cooking skills or lack of. Tell me how the stove worked. Like if you're going to cook a pot of soup. I mean,
they
do you
would.
build a fire under there?
Yes.
Or I mean,
yeah. You may have
out of
noticed.
wood?
You may have noticed there was a space. You know, the walls went up, and then behind, under the place where you can put the pans on top, there was a space to be able to put wood. Wood would sit in there on top of. You remember that photo of the fire bricks?
Yeah.
In there.
Okay.
So there really
All right.
wasn't very. This is partly why they are so good, because they conserve. They minimize the space for putting the fuel. It was really not a vast amount of space to put it, and so therefore they didn't. With the full-size stove, like the open fire, they'd have a whole stack of firewood.
Yeah.
And then maybe something over it to be able to hang the pot, but they're wasting all this wood. This way, the heat was focused all in one location, so that way they didn't have to waste all that wood, and it was all in one. It was all contained. Does that answer your question, Ruth?
Yes, I'm just fascinated by what you did. I can't believe this.
Well,
You know, I saw you working in one of those pictures. I mean, really working, reaching up and doing something.
yeah, it was fun though.
Wonderful.
It was fun.
Wonderful.
It was fun. It was fun. Any other questions?
yes.
Martha.
This is Martha.
Yeah.
Do the men and the women in these villages work in the fields? And if so, what are the agricultural products that are grown in Guatemala? In other words, I'm curious to know if they have any way of having income. Even a little.
What kind of crops?
Income.
Yeah, well, I just wonder if I'm asking what kind of crops are grown in this area, because I wonder if the people have any source of even a little bit of income.
The crops that I saw, they grow a lot of fruit when they can. They grow corn. They had some, and they had small areas. The problem is it's so mountainous. It's not really a good place to be. I don't quite know how they make a living. I'll be honest with you, Martha, because it's so mountainous, and then there's so much soil erosion. You could tell by the roads. I mean, they were so rutted, and they get flooding every year from all the rain. So I don't quite know. I'll be honest, I don't know. But they did have some crops. But it's very clear that there's a lot of poverty up there in the mountains versus when you get down onto the flatter ground, down towards Antigua, it's much, much more affluent in comparison.
So, the area lacks any kind of infrastructure to support some way of living. That it seems like a dead end street.
I think you pretty much pinned it down, yes.
I'd like to mention that I'm familiar with the idea of stoves for Central America. 4 of my granddaughters, when they were in high school, made trips to Central America with an organization out of San Francisco that does projects similar to what you were doing, different things, helping to build a school or whatever. And one of my granddaughters, when she came back from a summer project trip for her, I guess she was a senior in high school, and all the seniors have to do a project at the high school they go to, Sonoma Valley High School in California. She did a project of raising money to buy stoves to send to, I think, El Salvador. I'm not sure. It was one Central American country. And she was so concerned about the lack of safety in the way that people were cooking. And so her project was getting stoves to El Salvador.
Yeah, when I was in Nicaragua, there was a stove building project. It was not stoves like these, but they were kind of little small squat things. And they were easily transportable. Obviously, the ones we worked on were not transportable. They were pretty rooted to the spot. But these other ones were a little more portable, a little more, not much, but a little more portable. Yeah. And which meant that they could be moved from one place to another. But one of the goals is to try to reduce the amount of wood the amount of fuel that's being used. Because otherwise they've got these fires that, I mean, they're just using wood up. Yeah, I can understand why she would have been doing
that. What about the health effects of working over those open flames? We saw that in Africa, and we had an ophthalmologist with us, and he said that many of them were having very serious vision problems and actually would lose their vision because of having to cook over those open stoves with all that smoke in the air.
I'm sure the effects
lungs and the other health problems.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that the effects on the lungs were bad.
Yes, and it was more than just the lungs. He said it would affect the eyes too.
Yeah, I'm quite sure it was. I mean, but you could tell, I mean, the kids were healthy looking. They were surprisingly healthy looking, actually. But you could tell the adults, you know, they were not. I mean, you could tell the ravages of time and other things, they definitely were, you know, life is hard for them.
Were there any schools in the area?
I didn't see any.
Looks like a dead end.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, it was a trudge getting up there to these locations. I mean, they were stuck on the side of a mountain. And the educational level of the Guatemalan people, especially the indigenous, is very low. It's very, very low.
So Felicity, this is Luann.
Yeah.
Just a question about your building technique. Perhaps it's obvious, but why were you soaking the bricks so much?
Because otherwise they were covered with a kind of a dust that would have been a problem when the fire was lit.
Also, you want the mortar to stick, they have to be wet.
They need to be, yes. The mortar won't stick on the dust that is that coats them. So you have to soak them and clean them off well, because they were, some of them, in order to be able to get them to glue together.
They do that here, I can tell you from experience, having had my back wall taken out. And when it was going to rain, I said to the brick mason, well, all those bricks are going to get soaked. Can I help you move them to a dry? He said, no, I've got to wet them anyway. So yeah, I learned that. I learned that you have to build with wet bricks. Probably because of the water.
And they soak up a lot of water. They're real. I mean, they're like sponges. They soak it in, and that's the reason. The mortar, and also because of all that powder on them, the dust.
Yeah.
Felicity,
Yes, Martha.
was the water supply from wells?
Yes.
What about
Now, how
toilets?
safe it would have been to drink, I don't know.
I beg your
About
pardon.
sanitation, toilets, sanitation.
I didn't see any.
How did you get on?
Went around the corner.
Behind the bush.
Yep. Went around the corner, hung onto a bush on the edge. At one place we're at, it really wasn't. Everything was kind of hanging on the edge. So I kind of went round the back and I had to hang on to a tree so I didn't disappear down the cliff. There have been times when I wish I were a man when it came to that.
So what are the houses built from? Bricks? Or like the roof?
Dirt that they dig up and then they form it into brick-like and then they build them up.
Mhm.
So they're like Adobe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Adobe-ish.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then the older ones had the tiles, the clay tiles. How they got the clay tiles, don't ask me. And it was very clear that the older ones, the ones with the clay tiles, would have the ceilings like the one I showed you. Got the residue from the fire.
Dirty, sooty,
Oh,
black.
well, not just sooty. It was glue-like.
Creosote.
Resin.
Grease.
It's resin. It's burnt resin.
Mm.
And these cook rooms were not big. I mean, we'd have the stove, and then there wasn't always, the smaller ones, there wasn't a lot of space around them to work. So this woman, usually the woman, the wife, would have been in that room cooking.
So what do they eat? Do they eat a lot of rice? I mean, what is their diet?
Chicken,
Rice and beans.
chicken, beans, a lot of beans.
Beans.
Rice,
Chicken.
possibly, but I don't think they grow very much rice right there. So it's mostly beans.
Chicken, do they have chickens running around?
Oh God, yes. Oh yeah. That's where my comment about that turkey that was incubating her eggs. I said, I wonder when she would end up in a pot. Yeah.
Do they eat a lot of eggs? I mean, are there lots of eggs there? Must be.
Probably, but I didn't see a lot of eggs. They were mostly hatched. A lot of chicken and a lot of dirt.
Felicity,
Yes, Martha.
were the workmen from that area?
The stove builders.
Yes.
Yes.
or-
Yeah. If they weren't from that area, they were from very close by, so they were able to speak the Quiche dialect. None that I know of, when they were talking to the families, they did not speak Spanish. They were speaking Quiche. So therefore, we had the stove builders. They're the people who earned the $28 for each stove. And so then they would then they translate it to Spanish, and then we would translate if we needed to for instructions on what we're supposed to be doing when and where everything is, or if we needed to ask questions, then it was round the reverse. It was a slightly convoluted process.
Do all the other helpers speak Spanish? The people that had arrived, the 14 of you, did they all speak Spanish?
To some degree or another, yes. Yeah, to some, not all of us. There were about four or five of us who spoke some level of Spanish enough to be able to get by. And there was a lot of signaling and gesticulating. And once you built one, you kind of got into the rhythm of what you're supposed to do. It became a You know, you just do, okay, here's the same old thing all over
Assembly
again.
line.
It was, we went armed with old clothes and work gloves and flashlights and a lot of energy.
I ask you about the city where the hotel was. What was the name of that place again?
Chichi Castanango.
Is that a tourist destination?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
Are
Mainly because, well, it's up in the mountains,
Uh-huh.
and also because of the market. The market is famous. If you put the name of Chichi Castanango, if you Google it, you'll find that it's, yeah. Now, when we went, which was February, so I don't know, there were very few tourists in the market when we went to the market. Or maybe they were elsewhere because the market is so big. It's absolutely massive. That maybe there were so few of us around we didn't see each other. But yes, it's a place that people go to, that Americans go and foreigners go to.
And how far was that from the place you were building the stove?
It varied. It varied because it depended which village we were going to build the stoves. But it was usually about an hour's drive between Chichi and wherever it was that we went. And these places that we went to, we didn't know the names of those places because they were not very big. So it was but it was a very, you know, we were on dirt roads. And so driving was not an easy process. So but when I say how far, you know, some of them could have been only about 5 or 6 miles away. Some of them were 10, 12, 15 miles away, depended.
So what did you all do in the evening once you got back to the hotel?
Slept. I ate supper,
Showered.
took a shower. Thank God the hotel had pretty good hot water, thank goodness. Took a shower, ate supper, and then we had a meeting every evening between the you know, everybody got together and we had a meeting. And sometimes, and the builders were staying in the hotel, the stove builders were staying with us at the hotel. Obviously not in the same rooms, but in the same, you know, vicinity. And we paid for them, the church paid for them to stay at the hotel. So that way we all were together. They weren't, because they came from all kind of, from what I gather, different locations in the area. So we would then have a meeting which would last about half an hour, 45 minutes, just to kind of do a summary of how things went and if we should be changing anything. And then went to bed and slept very well. And then got up at about 6 in the morning and got going again.
So Felicity, it seems like if the stove builders got paid $28 per stove and you did 2, you would have something like what, $56 a day for them? That must have been quite a good salary, it seems like. Were these coveted positions?
Yeah, they had training. They had to have training in order to be able to how long the training took, I don't know, but they were trained to do the job. And they were very good. They were super. They were able to train and they did a very, very good job. And then they were able to pass the information on to us. They were fabulous. I think it's a fairly, I get the impression it's pretty much of a coveted kind of job.
It would seem.
And then they work with, you know, because different groups will go down at different times from here. So then they would work with different groups that go down there to do that. So we were not obviously we were not the only group. The other groups would go down and they would have contacts with them too. Any other questions?
I love their ladder, their homemade
Yes.
ladder.
Yes.
That was, it looks so heavy next to our, light ones, but it was so cute.
They everything. Everything is either homemade or they get it from somewhere. There was a lot of make do.
Yeah.
Mary.
Do you have any information on how this was coordinated? Is the government involved in this, or is this just between the churches there and the churches here, or what? Who organized this? How did it get started?
This started, I asked Joy, my friend, who does it for the Methodist Church in Richardson. How it the government is not really involved. I mean, it may know about it.
Church.
But it's primarily church. There's a main, Joy is only one person. It's from the main Methodist church, wherever that is. And they have this oven building program, and they've been doing it for years. And then there is a Methodist church. They have missionaries down there in Guatemala. And then they have coordinators. I met the coordinators down there were there as well, also staying at the hotel. So they coordinate between them. It's a big coordination issue because of course you've got to get all those materials. I mean, the bricks and the sand have to be transported there.
Yeah.
So no, to my knowledge, it's in Guatemala. It's probably best that the government is not involved. To be honest with you.
I think that's basically when they make build wells too, like in Nicaragua and places like that. That's all international, volunteer help, except the people on the ground, like you said, they actually end up getting paid, and it's very long working hours for them, working all the material.
Yeah. It was very, very interesting. It was very, very interesting. It's something that I would do. Someone is talking.
But I take it every other day.
If you're not talking, can you mute yourself,
in between, I take the red rice.
Elizabeth, could you mute yourself?
No, I just did it on my own reading. And it's very nice.
Elizabeth, if you're not asking a question, can you mute yourself?
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. I'm on the phone.
Can you mute yourself, Elizabeth? Please.
Well.
Thank you. It was really, really interesting. I would do it again.
I was going to say, would you go back?
Yes, I would do it again.
It is definitely hard work, because I helped build a well in Nicaragua, and it's very hard work. And the other thing is a lot of these villages have never seen a lot of white women with gray hair.
Right.
And so I had all these kids come up to me and would want to play with my hair and look at my hair, and you were told basically to, if that's what they wanted, you did that, even though you were there for another purpose. But it was amazing when I did it too. I was so humbled when I got back here and decided I don't need a lot of what I have. I just don't need it. My life is so cushy next to theirs, and they are so happy. That's what I couldn't get over, is the people are so giving, so happy.
Yeah.
Their kids are just so happy, and they have nothing.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I think a lot of our team, we had men on we were probably 50-50 men and women on in our group. And we women would, of course, we'd be wearing pants for a start off.
Yeah.
And then, and they'd look at us as if to say, what are you doing? And then we go in and we start doing all this physical work, and they're just astounded that we're doing all this. I agree. I would go back and do it again. Because I like that kind of work. I've gone to, I went to Tanzania and did not the equivalent, but volunteer work. I just enjoy it. So,
I enjoy it too.
Felicity,
yes, Martha.
where's the closest healthcare for people living in this area?
Probably Chi-Chi, but they probably don't have transportation.
They have anything besides obviously walking? That's it.
No,
They
probably
don't-
just walking. Just
I
walking.
mean, bicycles wouldn't work if you're in a mountain.
No,
Yeah.
walking.
So walking.
And of course,
No horse.
they're so used to subsisting. It's subsistence living.
Mhm.
They're so used to dealing with everything on their own. They're going to be very suspicious of anything healthcare wise.
Were there any elderly people?
I didn't see very many.
Life expectancy probably pretty low.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I would
probably
think so.
under 60.
I looked it up and the overall for Guatemala is 77 for women and 70, just short of 71 for men. But that would include the city.
And that will include the city and the affluent areas in the lower lands. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And I think if I remember, I think the educational level in that area would probably be almost nothing. I mean, they don't go to school, or if they do, it's very, very catch as catch can.
Yeah, that's generational living in the mountains like that.
Well,
That's
Silly
all we
question.
know.
Silly question. I assume they don't have cell towers anywhere
Oh,
out
Lord,
of the
no.
city. Out of the cities. See, Chi-Chi, and then no cell towers anywhere.
Cell service was iffy and Chi-Chi.
Yeah.
No. Oh, no.
Right.
Not a thing. No.
Well, I've been in places in Africa that you'd think, no way. And they do have them. You know,
Oh, yeah.
Masai,
Oh, yeah.
Africa has a lot.
I was quite astounded in Africa, and I was up in the mountains in Tanzania. I was quite surprised that they had as much as they did, all things considered. Yeah.
Right.
Not in Guatemala. Any other questions?
Yes, Felicity, I was unclear. You were mentioning that this was a cookhouse for a single family, or was it a communal type situation?
Single.
I would assume for a single family. But I don't think they look at everything they've got extended family and kids from other families, and I don't think they really have the division between families is not very strict.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Very good.
It was very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Felicity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, well, thank you. I'll go ahead and close it down now. And I'm assuming Edward will be back to host the next meeting, so I'll be off the hook.
Well, you did a very good job. Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
You have been very